The 80s, the golden era of television. Knight Rider, Tron, Snake Plissken, Saturday morning cartoons. Media outlets were riding the wave of our multimedia advancements, and imaginations could not have been any more peaked. Icons were made, legends of cinema and network television, and with this rush came one of the world's most notorious spokespeople.
This is Max Headroom, and what you're about to witness is one of the most sinister-sounding intros to a trailer to one of the greatest epics ever produced in the history of television. And there's more, because you are going to see it as well.
Yes, it.
Yes, it. Yes, namely, the Max Headroom story. Have you any idea how successful censorship is on TV? Don't know the answer? Successful, isn't it?
For anyone who lived through the 80s, Max Headroom is easily one of pop culture's most recognizable icons. Originally conceived across the pond in the UK, he was marketed as the first fully realized computer-animated host, the latest in cutting-edge computer technology. However, Max was in fact a live actor, played by Matt Frewer, who was dressed in prosthetics and makeup and filmed in front of a blue screen. This entire process was tedious. Frewer would spend hours in a chair while makeup and special effects worked their magic, and the final digital effect was placed in post with overlays. And at first, the illusion was effective, duping an entire nation. That didn't last long, however, and under the weight of perpetual questioning, the effect crumbled and Frewer was exposed. Surprisingly, this wasn't the end for Matt or Max. Frewer, who was a relatively unknown actor at the time living in the UK, nailed the performance. His timing, cadence, and quick wit captured the audience more than the bruise, and a cultural phenomenon was born. Max made his debut in 1985 with the Channel 4 movie, Max Headroom, 20 Minutes into the Future. The movie is set in a dystopian future, a capitalist society that has been brainwashed into overconsumption, a perpetual and nefarious plot spearheaded by network television. Gritty and hard-nosed journalist Edison Carter, played by Frewer, attempts to expose Channel 23 and their latest evil plot, but he's discovered and is injured during his escape, running his motorcycle into a traffic barrier which had the lettering, Max Headroom. Strangely, a young hacker who witnesses the accident immediately makes a copy of Edison's consciousness, backing him up on a server. The copy isn't perfect, representing the boldest aspects of Edison's personality, but they share the same goal of finally ending corporate corruption and control. Quickly after the movie aired, Max would return to Channel 4 with his own show, the Max Headroom Show, where Max was front and center as his creators had intended, introducing music videos, interviewing artists, and even engaging in conversation with the live studio audience. The show was, at the time, edgy and certainly unique. In USA, executives saw an opportunity for expansion, and in 1986, ABC Network would acquire the rights for Max and began their own big-budget series, the pilot of which followed the original movie, almost beat for beat. The series continued where the movie left off, with Edison Carter, Max, and crew on their continued battle to expose Channel 11. Although received relatively well, the series would only last 14 episodes across 2 seasons.
Say the Bears will win?
Yeah, say win big. I don't know, they haven't been able to cover for most of the year. The Bears today were made 12-point favorites over the Packers. Randy Wright should start at quarterback for Green Bay. Jimbo Covert will likely join Jay Hilgenberg in wearing one of those shoulder harnesses. They ought to just yoke the whole offensive line together. They'd be better off. In the meantime, Dennis McKinnon had some advice for fellow receivers Willie Gault and Ron Morris today. Speaking at lunch crowd at Ditka's, McKinnon said, if you want to play for Mike, you got to do more than just go out there and look pretty catching touchdown passes.
November 22nd, 1987, on Chicago TV WGN, while during the 9 p.m. newscast, the show was interrupted by a series of short breaches, totaling 25 seconds, as is seen playing in the background now. The pirate signal featured flashes of someone in a Max Headroom mask, sitting in front of a spinning sheet of corrugated aluminum, saying nothing. The masked man simply bobbed around as if caught in the midst of a maniacal laugh. The newscasters had no idea of the interruptions and continued on as if nothing had happened. In the background, however, technicians were frantically trying to isolate the breach. The FCC was called as a part of the process, and an investigation was immediately launched. Being the late 80s, things like hacking or pirate television were relatively unheard of. A modest group of tinkerers, underground backyard scientists, would become the forefathers to digital exploits and the modern-day hacker. Back then, however, these rebel pirates were restricted to the times, and hacking, or phreaking, was limited to a relatively narrow band of opportunity, still mainly focused around telecommunications. It was mostly limited to things like pirate radio, or shorting payphones for free long distance. Network cable, however, even in the analog days, had many more safeguards in place to prevent potential breaches, and in the late 80s, the FCC was just as active in pirate and hijack prevention than it was censorship. An hour after the first interruption on Chicago WGN, a broadcast of Doctor Who on Chicago Channel 11 was hijacked by the same Max impersonator for a full, unbroken 90 seconds.
In Chicago television stations, someone using sophisticated equipment managed to briefly and illegally override broadcast signals on WGN TV and WTTW. Jack Connolly reports now that both incidents are under investigation.
For years, there were rumors of another incident, and recently, video of the alleged third hijacking has surfaced. It is playing in the background now. The intrusion happened in the early hours of November 22nd at around 2:30 a.m. on PEG Public Access Television in North Reading, Massachusetts. The interruption was discovered on an old VHS cassette, and it's assumed this breach was a test run in advance of the planned network breach later that night. In the video, Max mostly rambles, nonsensical, like the second interruption on WTTN. As for who exactly perpetrated the attacks, no one knows, not even today. Many people have risen to try and claim the title, but they are quickly dethroned as they are meticulously picked apart by the armchair detective community. Most theories are speculative or circumstantial only, but at least a few of these theories are plausible. The most intriguing involves two Chicago locals, smart and popular. They were equally at home as pioneers of the phreaking and hacking community, as they were turning up bottles at a neighborhood bar or party. Known simply as J and K, their real names are not publicly known, and this story is ultimately second-hand. The theory is as follows. J, K, and J's girlfriend were at a party, where they were overheard boasting that something big was about to happen, and that everyone should watch Channel 11 later that night. Friends of Jay would later recall the staggering number of similarities between the incident and Jay's own personality, that regardless of who did it, Jay would find something like this both clever and hilarious. They recall how he had a similar cadence and tone to his speech, that the laugh and body mannerisms were shockingly close. Some circumstantial things support at least the age group the pirate might have been from. The clutch cargo theme that the masked Max hums would have been on air when Jay himself was a child. And importantly, in the eyes of his peers at least, Jay was bold enough and skilled enough to actually pull it off. It was suggested that the cameraman was K, Max Headroom was J, and the French maid at the end of the incident was Jay's girlfriend. This has never been proven, and the three would eventually be excluded from suspicion. With all the network safeguards and industry-specific engineering knowledge required for even daily operation, it would have been impossible to pull off without having someone, or many people, on the inside. That doesn't mean J and K could not have still done it, just that there was not enough evidence to support the theory. Of course, all the network staff were interviewed and cleared right away, and any follow-up investigations returned nothing but cold leads. To this day, 35 years later, the Max Headroom Incident has gone unsolved and remains one of network television's most notorious unsolved mysteries. Thank you for watching or listening. This is the second episode I've happily produced in this genre for Bad Day Headquarters, something I'm excited to keep going. There's no shortage of oddities and phenomenon in this crazy world of ours, and telling these stories will be my focus moving forward. If you haven't already, you can help the channel with 3 easy actions. Liking, commenting, and subscribing with notifications on will help keep you up to date when Bad Day Headquarters releases anything, and it truly helps each episode, and this fantastic channel deserves the love. Until next time, thank you for joining me for this, episode 2 of Something Strange.